Started. Thank you everyone for those who joined the session. Sorry, I can hear my own echo. Okay, yeah, I think this is better. Thank you everyone for those who joined the session. We were really excited to get started with one of the most trendiest topic discussions, which is Gemini Pro. I hope you've interacted a lot with it, at least on social media. The world is talking about LLMs, AI, generative AI. You all experienced it firsthand, not the Gemini Pro version, but you all learned about Gen AI in the cloud campaign. So I hope you remember at least a little bit about it, if not everything. And I hope today is your opportunity to learn a lot more about Gemini Pro and how you can um, integrate that in your existing solutions, or how you can use it for a completely new solution. Before I proceed, a quick show of hands. How many of you have registered for Solutions Challenge? And how many of you are working on a project that solves for a real world problem? Okay, I see quite some hands raised. You all can put your hands down. How many of you have already submitted your project for the India Regional Boot Camp? Okay, I see only two hands raised who've submitted their projects for India Regional Bootcamp. How many of you are waiting to submit your projects for the India Regional Bootcamp and perhaps waiting for the last minute so that the form closes and then you can reach out to the team that I wanted to submit my project, but I just missed the deadline? Jigar has raised his hand. He looks like he's waiting for the last minute. Okay, exams got over recently. All right, can't prepare IoT device. All right. How many of you were waiting for this session to happen so that you can get some guidance on Gemini Pro and then perhaps integrate that in your projects? Wow. Okay. I hope we organize this session a little earlier than actually what we are doing today. But never mind, it's never too late to learn something new. I hope you make the best out of the opportunity today. I hope you also relay this knowledge to your community members, and I hope you all build something really exciting, not just enables your learning journey, but also helps the community around you in the real world. All right. I have few more questions, and I know the audience that has joined us via YouTube, they might not be able to interact with us the way the GDSC leads are able to on the Google Meets platform. But just in case there's something that you would like to communicate to us, please do so via the leads channel. So in case you have any questions or something that you would like to communicate, you can share that with the GDSC lead in your campus and they can relay this to us via Google Meets platform. All right. Let me ask few more questions. How many of you were there in the session last week by Anuj Garg? Okay, I see quite some hands raised. How many of you actually built something after Anud's session? Maybe tried your first machine learning project after the session. Wow. I see some sincere folks as well in this cohort, which is nice to know. Uh, all right. And how many of you are trying to elevate your projects using today's session? How many of you want to continue your journey from there? Awesome. Uh, Yeah, thank you so much for being enthusiastic about learning. I really, really appreciate, and I hope you all know the context now. Why am I saying this? With that, I know you all have been now waiting to hear from Roman a little bit more on the Gemini Pro side and want to perhaps stop my Q&A. So I'm going to take a pause here. Roman has already joined us and would love to share a lot more about Gemini Pro with all of you. So, hey Roman,
Hey, Nikita. Thanks.
hey. Uh, I know that you've all met with Roman in your journey on the Google Cloud Study Jams time. So, I am not going to give a long introduction about Roman, but Roman is a developer advocate at Google, and he is someone we always trust and would always look up to when it comes to Google Cloud. He has amazing knowledge about not just Google Cloud, but how you can bring different worlds together. May that be, say, an existing Flutter application and Google Cloud. He has tremendous knowledge in all these domains. So he's going to speak about the most trendiest topics on the internet right now, which is Gemini Pro and Duet AI. So I hope you all capture notes. We'll also have the video on YouTube, so you can also look back at it as you're building your projects. And I look forward to your submissions for the India Regional Bootcamp. Over to you, Roman.
Thank you, Nikita, for the introduction and for setting the context. And good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining in at this hour also. So what we'll do is we'll get going, of course, while see a few examples, etc. But the purpose should be for you to understand what Gemini brings to the table in terms of the model and of course the possibilities that are with that model. Plus, I think the key would be that you would be anyways creating a application that's probably much more wider in context, and you could be looking at utilizing the Gemini model in some way or the other within the scope of that application. So what we also be touching upon is how do we get started with integrating a model like that, what kind of APIs we've got, or maybe what kind of client libraries we have that should make it that simple for you to at least integrate it. Eventually it's going to come down to your data, it's going to come down to the prompts that you kind of choose your application functionality that you want. But integration should be an easy task, and also that's a key thing that we'll be at least highlighting today. Next, I just wanted to take this opportunity to also show you another piece of this, along with Gemini. Like maybe this is a question, I'll just put it up and feel free to put in your answers or whatever you think it was in the chat. So on the day that we announced Gemini, maybe a day or two later, or maybe almost near that, we announced another pretty interesting tool for developers. Would anyone know what that is? Just typing. If you've been following.
Project IDX?
No. But yeah, you can kind of say that it depends of it. AI Studio, yeah, that's what we're going to see anyways today. Okay, anyone heard about Duet AI? Anyone? Heard about it? Okay. So anyway, what I'll be covering also is Duet AI, which is available for use till end of this month for free. So I'll also be showing you Duet AI, something similar, but of course it's much more than just like a coding assistant or like a co-pilot like functionality that we have. So I'll also show you how you can get going with Duet AI within a popular IDE. So maybe a show of hands, right? How many of you use Visual Studio Code for your everyday maybe coding needs? So I'm sure a majority of you would probably be using a tool like that. So we'll actually see within Visual Studio Code how you can utilize one of the templates that we have made available for Gemini that makes your integration that simple. And we'll also touch upon Duet AI within that. So we're going to be seeing several things where the will be squarely on once we just put into place what Gemini is, how do we start integrating it? And secondly, how do we get a little bit more productive, while using all of these things from a, I would say, developer productivity point of view. So we'll see a range of things which you can then maybe pick and choose to go out and build your application. Hopefully what you see today just helps to speed that whole process up. Eventually it's the best idea slash implementation that's going to win, but at least the mechanics of how you go about building it, hopefully you see a few productivity gains after we highlight a few things today. All right, so a few things I just wanted to maybe set the context is that feel free to keep typing in the chat any questions that you may have. I'll keep looking at that once I share the two screens, so that in case there are some relevant questions, I'll also take, I'll leave some time towards the end also for questions. So having said that, let me do a few arrangements and start sharing my screen. Give me a minute. All right, you should be able to see my screen now. Maybe a quick show of hands. All looking good. Shall we move forward? Okay, cool. Thanks. So let's get going with what we have in terms of the session today. So first up, right? Of course, you heard about Gemini. Sometime it's been a while since we've been working on that, but somewhere around, you can say, the mid of December, we announced this, and this is a multimodal model, so that you can actually give it as input videos, you can give it as input images, or even text, or a combination of these, and then sort of ask questions. So like you could literally say, here is a video, could you tell me what's there in it, right? Or you could just, maybe if you're used to just text-based prompts, you could just ask those kind of general questions. Or maybe you can even like probably ask questions of an image, or to whatever it is, analyze it. But remember, and we'll see different models that we've made available here. But just keep in mind that the multimodality of this is more around the fact that at the moment, the it's available for public use takes in different kinds of inputs, the types of inputs, but the output that it produces at this point in time is text. Now, first, before we jump into, you would have seen various, I would say, product names. Sometimes these names over the months, we've kind of even changed it. And of course, there are so many of these services that at times it's a little bit difficult to put a picture in terms of what is this stack really looking like, right? What are all these pieces? Where does each one fit into the whole picture? So just try to understand that a little bit, and that's what this slide right now is about. The way you would want to probably read this or understand it is that right at the bottom, and at the lowest layer, that is, right, I won't call it like layer level, or whatever, whichever way is okay for you. The lowest level, what we've got really is the infrastructure. And by infrastructure, this is compute, this is network, this could be your TPUs, GPUs, all of that stuff, right? So primarily Google Cloud Platform, which provides many of these infrastructure components, that's really the layer at the bottom that's like powering all of these things, or on which these other things are sort of built up. So once you keep, like go at a level that's higher than the infrastructure, that's where the core models, the foundational models, which you're seeing, come into play. So obviously, if you've been following this news for a while, we had the Palm models, and now we basically are requesting people, that's the way to go about is the Gemini models, and that's coming in flavors. We'll talk about that in brief. But really, these foundational models are sort of served from our infrastructure itself, and then on top of it, right? You have two products, and we'll talk about this a little bit more a bit later too. But think of it this way, right? That hey, you just want to get going as quickly as possible. Maybe you just want to say, give me a UI where I can test out my prompts quickly, etc. And I can just say, okay, let's the Gemini model. This is my prompt. I'll just run it, see what the result is, and I want the integration to be as simple as possible via an API key or something like that. So that's where the AI Studio thing comes up. For those of you who have been following this news for a while, this was formerly known as or previously known as Maker Suite. And that has got rebranded as AI Studio. But think of AI Studio as something that almost anyone can use. It's available on the web. You need a Google account. And once you're in, we say, I want a text prompt or I want a structured prompt. Here is my prompt. This is my model. Show me what the output is, right? So you're not really worrying about too many things. So the integration is simple here via just an API key, and we'll see all of that. Vertex AI, if you look at that, I would say suite of services really is more for the enterprise, for an organization where you want to actually you're like a builder, right? So you're going to be probably building your own models, or you're going to be extending some of these, or maybe you're also going to be using any of the other models available. It could be some vision models, or even some of the other open source models could be made available over there. But you've got an entire MLOps or various things that you might require, right from train, right from feature engineering, right from model serving, model monitoring, and all of that aspect, right? So obviously, from an enterprise level, you need those features. I believe that for the solutions that you are trying to build out, you may not necessarily need Vertex AI. Eventually, if you want to move on to that with some of the enterprise controls, you can always do that. But if you want to just start exercising the Gemini models as quickly as possible, then going via the AI Studio to try out a few prompts and then using the API key itself to integrate into your applications could be a quick path to do that. And there's also a free tier that's available for that. So you should be good enough from your solution building point of view. So I think we'll come to this picture a little more again, but think of it like you've got your foundational models, which is the Gemini model. And then as a user, you might probably opt for an AI Studio to try out, or tune your prompts, etc., and then get the integration code itself so that you can embed that integration code into your application. Vertex AI, you can hold off for a while, but at the same time, think of it like an enterprise version, and a plus an entire, like if you are actually a machine learning engineer, you want to build your own models, host your own models on our optimized serving infrastructure, etc., then Vertex AI could be the way to go. On top, right, is Duet AI. Duet AI is for users. And you might have also seen that Duet AI for workspaces there. So for example, help me write an email, or here is my document, could you summarize it for me, etc. That's Duet AI for workspace. We're not talking about that over here. We are talking about Duet AI for Google Cloud, but specifically I'll highlight some parts of what is there in it for you developers so that you can sort of have almost like an assistant or a coding assistant that's there with you in popular IDEs for VS Code, right? So this is a model. Don't worry if it's still not very clear. At the end of the day, as long as you're able to use maybe, and I'll show you a very quick path also to do that with a demo, so you should be okay. But just keep in mind, really speaking, the models are already hosted by Google. They are going to be providing you an API key or various client libraries, so which you can just invoke the model, right? So just if you keep that much part in mind also now, it's okay. There's a question out here that can be used. Again, when I say there's a question out there, I'm looking at the chat. So feel free to put in a chat message or a question if you would want to. So there's a question from Karthik. Can we use Gemini models for free now to integrate test with Android or Flutter apps. So absolutely, that's what we will show that to you. And with using an API key method, which I'll demonstrate, you can start using it for free. There is a certain, typically any services in Google Cloud are always governed by a fair usage / quota, but we've also made a free sort of a quota available by which you can exercise it for a certain number of requests per minute. So unless you're like trying to crash the thing by having thousands of requests per second, you will not be allowed to do that in a free thing. But from a solution development point of view, I believe you should be fine. You can use it for free. So hopefully that answers. And when it comes to Android or Flutter or web or maybe even any other server-side backend infrastructure, for example, if you're a Python developer, or who knows, you're like someone who's just saying, I want to write a very interesting command line utility that simply uses Gemini behind the scenes. So in all of these integration scenarios, you have to generate an API key in AI Studio and integrate it, and we'll see all of that stuff, right? So moving forward, again, just a little bit, coming back to this model, and what are some of the key things at a very high level? Not necessarily that you need to know kind of this, but it's just nice to just have this as to how we went about building it. So obviously there are three key, I would say, very high level things that distinguish Gemini. So one is the whole multimodal aspect of it. Then of course there is a reasoning part of it. Again, instead of getting confused, sophisticated reasoning looks like some buzzword or just some fancy word. We will talk about what each of these words really mean. It's more about like it's able to just look at a tremendous amount of data and then sort of give you the right kind of answers. Advanced coding, again, is all about good support for most of the popular programming languages, if I have to simplify it that way. Just sort of touching upon each of these three in a little bit, right? Again, it's designed natively itself to be multimodal. So when Google went about it, right, it was not like we will just take each of these modes and then kind of slap something together. No, right from the beginning, right, it was meant that it will handle input types of different, let's say input types of different types. Like, so it could be a video or a text or a audio, and then it should probably be able to sort of answer you based on what you want to do with those inputs. So again, the multimodal feature is extremely important. Right now, just keep one small thing in mind, which also, as we go along the next few months, that will become, a non-issue. But remember, when you are looking at using a model, just think of what's the kind of input you're going to give it and what's the kind of output you're going to expect. And what I mean by that is the question that you're going to ask the model, but more about the type. So is it going to be a simple text input and then you get a text output, or is it going to be a video file that you may provide, or is it going to be an image, or is it going to be some audio, and then you're expecting accordingly a output. Sometimes you might even say, for example, right, that hey, I'm going to describe a scene, and then you should generate an image out of it, right? So again, keep in mind what's the kind of prompts you're going to be creating, but along with prompts, what's the kind of types it may have. For example, you may say, look at these three images and then tell me which one may suit, maybe interior design of a living room, something of that sort. So again, you're combining various inputs, types, and then expecting some output. But even your output, keep in mind, if you think that Gemini right now should be able to do something what Image Gen or any of the other image models do, where you describe something and produces an output image, the current that's available in public preview, that doesn't do that, but we have in private preview, many of those are model input output also available. In due course, these things will be available, but right now just keep your use cases from that point of view, Gemini. The next thing, as I mentioned, was the reasoning skills. Again, various kinds of documents, various kinds of information. The key is going to be that this tremendous amount of information, right? It be able to analyze it and then, of course, give you back the answer. And the third thing that I mentioned was the whole coding aspect of it. By coding aspect, what I mean is that support for programming languages. So it's not that it's just one or two languages, but various programming languages, right from the grounds up, inside of Google, the way the programming languages are used, some best practices, some great examples, code samples, projects, etc. A lot of thought has gone into doing all of that from a modeling perspective, so that you get some good quality, code output that's written. So, for example, your prompts could be about generating code. Your prompts could be completing code. Your prompts could be about, hey, I've got this piece of code. Can you explain that to me? Your prompts could be, this is my piece of code. Can you generate test cases for me? Your prompts could be like, here's my code. Can you create some inline comments accordingly for me, right? This is my code. Could you refactor for me? This is my code. It's not running well. Could you maybe find or fix that bug for me, right? So when you look at it, right, look at the, like, for example, you're giving code as an input, you're probably getting some description, or you're giving a description and saying, generate the code for me, or you're giving a part of the code and saying complete it, but the output is again some code, right? So all of this, it's like really well suited. Again, keep in mind that at the end of the day, these are large models, right? And they are obviously going to be certain things in terms of how you probably prompt them. At times, you may find these models do not return the kind of, I would say, output that you desire, but that's just the way of working with these models. All of these models are, again, bound to improve. There are also techniques by which you can ground these models. You can prevent certain kinds of responses from models, but that's a completely different topic. But keep in mind that it's not like if you don't get the output, applications can't be made. There are techniques from a retrieval, augmentation, generation point of view, RAG, that you would have heard about, where you can use to really give the right kind of outputs. So maybe I'll just look to a question. Do we need G Cloud credits to use free limited version of Gemini models? The answer is no. So you can just generate an API key and you should be good to go. If you use any of, let me correct your my answer itself, not your question, is if you're going to be used, so if I go back in my slides to this particular diagram, so this particular slide which you see the AI Studio and you see Vertex AI. So if you're going to be using Vertex AI, then Vertex AI, obviously, there are many parts of it which are governed by paid services. So if you're going to be using Vertex AI, I would suggest that at some point in time, you have to pay for these services, and or if you've got Google Cloud credits, then you can use that. But if you're going via the AI Studio route, via the API key, you get a free quota. That should be more than enough for you to sort of exercise. Okay, so let's, so we saw some three key features which I was talking about at a high level in terms of its capabilities of the model. But now there are also different sizes, as you can see, and there's quite some interesting work. While it's not available for you to straight away take away, even on devices, like for example, mobile devices, we are looking at seeing how we could sort of give you a more compact version, the nano version of this model, so that it completely changes the game, right? From a generative AI perspective, where now right at the edge or right on the device, you'll probably have, an ability to, get some of these answers without making a round trip all over the place. So again, different sizes are available, which can be used at this point in time. From a usage perspective, what is available for everyone? Of course, all of the models are available. A couple of them are in private preview with a few customers. But at the moment, if you want to use something, the Pro version is what is available for you. So, given that, let's sort of go over to what is required really. to build Gemini. Sorry, sometimes I end up saying Gemini, but that's okay. So what is needed to build applications that are powered by this? Now, I think just to set things in context, there's nothing very special when it comes to, I would say, integrating this, because just like any other, I would say API or a service that you're looking to integrate, at the end of the day, what you will expect from providers in this specific case, what you would expect from Google would be that, hey, if you've got a model, I'm assuming you're going to be giving us some kind of an API that we can invoke and integrate in our applications. So then whether it's question was asked, whether it's Android app, whether it's Flutter app, I would probably keep even extending it, whether it's even a web application, maybe some kind of a command line tool that you're running, on your local machine, or probably any other backend, or popular stacks that you want to use. From any of these, ideally, as long as you can make a REST API call, you should be good, because a REST API call is provided. At the same time, we've also, compared to Palm, done I would say, a much better job in giving you some of the client SDKs that you can use. So like 2 lines of code, 3 lines of code, and we'll see that. And you literally have not just creating a connection to the Gemini model, but then just one more line of call saying, generate text or generate answer or whatever it is with your prompt giving, and it gives you back the thing. So a few lines of code and you should be there. What you should be focusing on as you go after this session basically is how and what is a key feature that you believe a model like Gemini can help you address, right? So that's going to be the key. Can you make some folks more productive? Can you generate some things for them? Can you completely change the way people interact with your applications, for example, via a natural language sort of a thing? So instead of having a very structured kind of a form or structured kind of a way by which people can maybe slice and dice your data even in an application, what if you built actually a natural language interface on top, which sort of took your data, took their questions, and then gave them some answers? It could be that's what you need to think also a little bit more. But integration part, we'll see, it's pretty straightforward. So moving forward, before I go forward, let me just see. Okay, I'll Karthik, it's a fair enough question, but not the question probably for today's session right now. So which tech stack, I can't predict what's going to be the thing in the future. I think if I have to just summarize maybe a quick answer to your question, all cloud providers are competitive. Due respect to everyone, each one's service has got some unique features. Now, what you need to do is to just sort of explore them. In our case, it's Google Cloud. We would love for you to explore that, see how easy it is for you to use it. But at the same time, it's like people have choices, and choice is a good thing. So I would say that all cloud providers are extremely good, extremely competitive, and it's up to you to explore it, see if it meets your use case in terms of features, efficiency, could be cost, could be so many reasons. One chooses a provider or a technology stack. There are pros and cons, some trade-offs, etc. So let's keep that answer to that generic level. So I would say any of the tech stacks, any of the cloud providers are always good to learn from a career point of view. Let's move on. Okay, so let's look at this particular slide, which is a different, not different, but just a little bit of coloring maybe that I've added. So the whole idea over here is that we're now going to be looking at how you start integrating the Gemini models into your application. So there are 2 ways, as I mentioned, you could use it. One was the Vertex AI one, which is the more enterprisey, with several controls, like data is stored, some regional requirements, some compliance requirements. Plus, it's an entire suite of services for a true builder who wants to build, extend ML models, host them, monitor, feature engineer, retrain them, so on. AI Studio is more of, I would say, gives you a UI It allows you to exercise some of the Gemini models quickly, gives you a piece of code also that you can immediately integrate into your application. It does it in 3 4 languages, and gives you an API key also so that you can start going quickly. So the focus, right, as I mentioned, since you're building out a solution, should be how quickly you can integrate this whole thing. And that's why I think our focus uh, today will be on using AI Studio, or basically the mechanics via AI Studio. I'll of course show you many other things also so that you can actually start integrating it quickly. A quick question asked: is Gemini considered better than GPT? Sorry, I will not answer any competitive questions that don't add value at this point in time to the session. So let's move forward to AI Studio. And now, some of you might have, has anyone tried out Maker Suite or AI Studio? Maybe just a question. Yes, no, you folks. Okay. All right. So basically, like for those of you who know or who do not know that also, AI Studio, I mean, formerly it was called Maker Suite, and now it's got rebranded along with that same, I would say, uh, time that we released Gemini. We also announced a rebranding of the Google AI Studio, of course, with the Gemini model also available inside of that. So basically, this is available from the URL which you see, and like maybe what I'll just show you that in a while, but maybe the next the slide here right now says what all you can do with this AI Studio. It's pretty much available for anyone to use with a Google account. And over here, you can do multiple things. You can try out some models, experiment with the prompts, and most importantly, in your case, it's also about, now that I've maybe figured out some prompt, this looks interesting, this seems to be working in a way that I could now integrate into your application. Hey, can I get the code to, or can I export the code to then integrate into the application, right? So if I just go to the, I'm inside of Maker Suite google.com, as you can see. Let me maybe, is this font good enough? Maybe a show of hands. Yeah, is this fine? Okay. All right. So basically, I'm inside of Maker Suite, or now, of course, the word for it is, or the branding for it is Google AI Studio, and you see a few things that should immediately strike you, right? The first thing is a get API key. We'll come to that, but otherwise, more than that, what's important is this create new functionality that lets you sort of create either in a chat mode or a one-shot prompt mode or even a structured one. So if you look at a free-form prompt, right? So for example, it just gives you a sample prompt, but let's say we are here and maybe this is a question that you want to probably create a app and then say do some classification and UI or whatever. This is a very simple example. The prompt is over here, and you can see that on the right, correct? You have the ability to, I think, change the model that you may want to use your prompt against. So you can either do a pro. If you do a vision, for example, this is best suited for, like giving in your images and then asking questions of that. So you could maybe do it that way too, and then provide, a sample image that you would like to pass to it. So completely up to you how you would want to exercise it. So if you do a Gemini prompt, categorize an apple as a fruit or a vegetable, of course, for those of you who have got a little bit of more knowledge about sizing some of these large models, there is also a concept of a temperature. And there are also some settings like, the output or the tokens, K and the top P. So how many of you are aware of this top P, top K, tokens, temperature of a model? Probably if you have been dabbling with any of these LLMs, you would have come across that. I mean, probably we can't go into each one of these, but these are ways by which you can actually influence the output. So for example, just very quickly, temperature is a value that's sort of ranging from 0 to 1, and the higher the temperature, what's the thing? Can I ask a question? If it is 0, what does it mean? And if a temperature is 1, what does it mean? Can anyone kind of maybe just type in the answer? what happens when you sort of change the values of a temperature? What are you trying to influence the model by doing that? Anyone gets more creative at one. The accuracy could be yeah. Again, nobody knows about really what the output could be, but really you're hinting that the higher the temperature, it gets more creative. So again, or at times people say the higher the temperature, it may start bluffing, or it may start creating anything that it thinks of. But the lower the temperature or a zero, it's very deterministic. I think both are right and both are wrong also, because again, this models are not supposed to be deterministic every single time. So by giving a temperature, you're just trying to maybe influence and just sort of guiding the model towards what it should try to do. So depending upon the use case, right? For example, if you wanted to create a poem, or if you wanted to create a song, possibly what you want is that the model should get creative there. So in those cases, try to keep the temperature higher and see what kind of interesting output that you may get. But in case you're looking for more like, say, maybe a fact-based thing, or could be something where you ideally don't want that it's too much creative, just tell me the answer and I'm done with it. Try and shift the temperatures to lower level. Again, nothing is right, wrong. You might still be surprised sometimes when the response is, but then that's how things work here. Again, top P, top K, go with the defaults, but in case there's a lot of material that's available to help you to tweak that. But working with prompts, I would say the guidance is play with some of these parameters and see if you're getting somewhat the output that you desire. Now in this case, we just given a very simple prompt over here, and all we are doing is simply running it. So again, the point, I mean, this is similar to any of the other things that you all might be using, but keep in mind that what we are trying to do over here is that if I have to test out my prompt and everything is working fine, there is this whole thing that either you can save it so that you possibly can have these prompts ready for you. But what I wanted to point out was this thing called get code. And if you click that, right, you will see that there are now, depending upon the language and that you may want to, or basically whatever be the platform you're trying to integrate into. So if it is Python, it's telling you what's the way you can go ahead and actually integrate this very whole thing, right from instantiating a model to providing the different prompt parts, or even to finally generate the thing. So this is Python, but similarly, there is the JavaScript side of things, there is the Android side of things, Swift side of things. Probably if you go to the documentation, which will go in, you can do a lot more than this also. So again, this is one way by which you can do the things. Even for example, let's say we go to another one, unsaved changes, that's fine. So, okay, we can leave this and we go to the vision model. And let's say it's giving you a sample, image out here to see this, write a short, fun poem inspired by these pictures, right? Now, you're not too worried about what output it gives, right? But again, if you look at the code part of it, right? Or let's step back a bit, right? Here, what you're talking about is there is text, this is one part, and there are two other parts where each of those part types are images. So if you look at the get code part of it, let's say for Python, don't worry if you're not a Python programmer also, you will see that, there are these multiple parts here that it is constructing. So the image parts, there are these two of them, and then the full prompt is really the text prompt part, and then the two image prompts that are out there. So this is, and then see what you're doing is you're finally giving out this whole thing into a generate content. So it's literally like whatever you put in a natural language out here, you can then do it inside of your code also. So I would suggest, and again, I'm not saying this can't be done in Vertex AI or other things also. So very quickly, right, instead of AI Studio, if you had to go and do this in Vertex AI, and of course, if you have a Google Cloud account and things like that. So out here right now, I've just gone to my Google Cloud console. For those of you who are familiar with Google Cloud, this is the Google Cloud console that's out there. And I'm inside of the console here that you can see. And let's take a look at this. And while there are so many services, a quick way I can do that is let's go to the Vertex AI platform. Okay. And in Vertex AI, right, again, if you see over here, there's this multimodal thing that we've added. So if you look at multimodal and then just open up this, you can again start deciding what kind of prompt you want. So for example, you can just say, how do I make a cake? And again, here on the right side, as you can see, you'll have definitely a lot more models if there is a way you can get it for your accounts, etc. But otherwise, temperature, token limit, all of these things are as is. Other than that, it's all about just sending the prompt across over here, and you will see that okay, this is the response. That's okay, but you will similarly see how the get code is present over here also. So if you click this again here, you've got similar ways by which you like either install the Python pipes, or in the Node.js they'll tell you the npm packages. In Java they'll probably tell you the Maven dependencies that are out there, and then you can integrate this into your code. So again, similar things are present, of course, in Vertex AI. As you can see, we've got notebooks, we've even got the whole thing, as I told you, from preparing your data sets, features, stores, labeling, training, model, basically where you like host it, even vector search, for example. So this is a complete ML platform in itself, which requires that many of these services you will have to pay for. But in the case of the AI Studio, if I go back to that, basically, let's say you've got this code, right? And if you see in this code, all it is telling you is, what's your API key? Right. Similarly, the question next would be, what's this key and where can I get it from? So if you're in Google AI Studio itself right now here, you can see there is a get API key option. So of course, I'll not save this, but you'll also see some, API keys that will get. So when you can actually use an existing project, but in your case, just go forth and create an API key in a new project, and you should be fine. It will generate a key for you, and then all you need to do is click and get that key, and then accordingly use it in your application, and we'll do that in a while, right? So going back to the presentation. So again, I would say that compared, or if I just go back to this particular thing, the reason we're sort of focusing on the AI Studio right now is get the API key, try out your prompts, get the code, and integration is much more straightforward. Again, nothing stops you eventually from going down the Vertex path also, but I would say that's more for the enterprise and other resiliency and many other requirements that enterprises have from a point of view of using ML services. So that's AI Studio for the moment. But let's sort of see this in action, right? And I'm not sure if there was a one-pager that we had sort of shared with everyone. We can share that again. But that one-pager just had some very quick steps that you can take. For example, you might say, look, I'm building out a solution, or I'm building out an application. I know Gemini could be useful. I've tried out a few prompts, or maybe whatever it is. Let me get going as quickly as possible, right? So these links are provided, and we'll share this anyway with you. These go to the same thing actually. So these will go to the Maker Suite API key itself, which I showed you over here, this part, right? So the place you should be ideally going for all kinds of documentation first, right, would be the whole ai.google.dev. So I've just opened all of that stuff for you, the ai.google.dev. And here, right, this should be your one-stop in case you're looking for documentation, looking for integration into your specific client application or whichever application you're integrating it into. So you can see that we've got not just getting started with AI Studio, So for those of you who have never used Maker Suite or Google AI Studio, there's a very quick tutorial right here so that you can get familiar. As you've seen, it may not need too much of guidance also to use it. Should be pretty much intuitive, but still, it shows you free from prompt, right? Let's create this, all the steps, etc. are there. So this is a very nice, short, sweet guide for getting used to AI Studio. But once once you're created your prompts, everything looks fair enough for you to start integrating. Pick one of the quick starts that you see over here, right? So choose your language environment that you want to integrate into. Worst case scenario, if it is something outside of this scope, I would say take a look at the REST API, and you should be able to then accordingly just make a REST API call in your respective languages to do that. But in case there's an existing integration like a Python or a Go or a Node or Web, whatever it is, please use that. It just makes your life easier. Apart from that, any further things that you want to do, obviously the documentation is over here, but this is a thing that you should probably just bookmark for using Gemini. So it's ai.google.dev. This gives you introduction to Google's AI Studio, plus pick your language, pick your framework, and start integrating it as quickly as possible. So just going back to the presentation there. So what we are saying is visit that, get an API key. However, you might just want to maybe see, are there some examples I could maybe get, who knows, inspiration or some ideas from. So again, example prompts, we've given that link. We've given tons of those things also out here. So whether, what kind of quick starts, etc. Just go over here, right? You can just say, show me some quick starts, but show me in Go, right? So just another way of navigating it, but just helps you to quickly get to what you're trying to do. So take a look, because this also would not just have the quick start, but a quick start internally will also have, for example, what some sample prompts. So for example, write a story, right, is there. Or what they're saying over here is, see, it's showing you like I'm taking two images and then I'm going to be asking what's the difference between these two pictures, right? So take a look at some of these samples. In case you're, obviously this may not apply directly to maybe some of the solution challenges, but this should trigger some thoughts. For example, if there's a before kind of a picture, right? Or that's a kind of solution you're building, who knows, some extra modification of this prompt itself might get you some very interesting results. So keep in mind, sort of like, now this is where I want you to start thinking that what you thought you had to analyze an image on your own and do something. What if you just ask the model and it gives you back some pretty interesting responses? So just take a look at all of these, I would say, examples. It'll just throw up some prompts and you'll get some ideas. I also wanted to show you some more examples, but just hold off on that. So again, this quick start is simply telling you that to do that, few steps are only needed. Get your key, and once you have your prompt, pick a language or the client SDKs that we have, and straight away integrate that. Sometimes the integration is as straightforward as what you're seeing over here, right? It's which is the model you want to choose, and then tell that model generate the content. So this is a Python example, but even the other examples are not too verbose at times, right? So it's just about going to be like, are you getting the prompt and what you want to do correct? Integration should be as straightforward as a few lines of code, and we'll see that in a while. What I wanted to show you was a few examples, right? Just to get some of the thoughts going. When we say multimodal, right, what could be some of the examples? So for example, the capabilities in terms of the provision model, right, is again, to reiterate the thing which I said earlier. It accepts text and imagery as input, but it will currently give you only text output. So for example, you could extract text from images, right? Sometimes if you want to even extract not just text, but in a very structured format, like for example, JSON, you could do that also. You could do image question answering, right? That this is an image. What do you see, or what is the person doing, or what is his dog doing in the picture? You could even say, like for example, sorry, if you see that video of a surfing thing, right? You could say that maybe create a text-based description for this ad, which I'm going to show. Maybe if you see on the right side, it could be what are the prices of these items, right? So describe video content, image content, difference. Just think intuitively. It could be anything. So specifically, for example, right? What you're seeing over here is that this is an image, and see that the multimodal prompt which you see on type. The first part is the text part, which is read the text in this image, and then it's giving the image, right? And then you will find that the result is something like what you're seeing down here. So it could be a way by which you could just sort of, like an OCR like functionality that you can get from the image as to read the text, or maybe it's a little different from saying what do you see in this image, right? Now, similarly, something like this, you can actually give sample images and sample text as a JSON and say this one is where you're saying it's a city and the landmark. Again, city and landmark. And the next one, you just say that, hey, give me the answer for that. And now, instead of doing it in a text-like way, free-form way, it actually gives you back a result in the format, in the samples that you have. So few short prompting, where you can actually give few examples and say, this is how I expect it to come as an output. The model will respect that and give you the output as you see. Maybe you can think of this as a quiz, where you can say that I'll give this image and I'll ask the user which city it is in, or whatever, some things about the landmark. And if it is anywhere close enough to what you have, who knows? That could be one way by saying, okay, you're quite close to the answer, or something like that. What is the price of this? So literally, you've not asked what are the items, or could be like, you're not saying what do you see in this image. You're actually getting down to a text part that says, yeah, that's the what is the price of this, and then you're giving the image, and it sort of extract this. Again, remember, a lot of this output might be completely, dependent on the kind of images also that you give. So if you give very blurred or not good enough images, obviously don't expect that this is going to give you the always the correct answer. It might sometimes go a little bit wrong. But think for a moment that if you had to do this, by building an own model, it's quite a complex task, versus now saying, let's see if this generalized foundational model itself, which is available to us, is able to do that or not. Another example, here you're just saying extract the items and the prices, right? So probably 3 to 4, whatever it could find. Sometimes it might miss a thing or two also, but this goes to show the capability of this model. And something like this, write a creative story inspired by this image, and then you'll see probably a story that's come out there. Could be something interesting. For example, if you're writing something around news, you could even say, here are a few key points about a news reporting, and now create an entire news story. So at least, obviously, you'll not go ahead and just publish that news story as is, but the whole copywriting work, the initial creation work, filling in the other details could be by a model like this. So it saves so much of time. Instead of like 5 articles you could do in a day, who knows, you could like become just an editor now, and 20 pieces are generated for you quickly, right? So think about not replacing humans, or not sort of doing something of that sort, but more like how can you make them productive? How can you remove the whole tediousness from some of these tasks? Sometimes manually you're doing the same thing again and again. Can that get automated? Can you make people start enjoying their jobs by being a little bit more productive? Remember, productivity is not necessarily always about that I have some metrics and now I'm able to produce more lines of code, so that means I must be productive. It's also a little bit subjective in a sense that, is the developer enjoying now a little bit more their jobs. Things that they were getting bored doing again and again, have some of those things now got automated to a certain extent, by which they can now focus on things that they probably like to do more of in the day, right? So think of productivity, even from those angles point of view. Similarly, like for example, this is the one I was telling you about. So there's a video clip there, and literally you're telling the model, take a look at this video, and probably while creating the video or whatever it is, shooting the video, I've decided that this is going to be like the ad, right? So maybe it's telling you what's the ad for this video, how do we go about, right? So literally, if this sort of plays well, it's a simple surfing experience kind of a promotion that the user wants to do, and you find that the results what you see are down there. So again, vary the temperature. Maybe instead of just saying provide a tourism ad for this video, you could give it some other hints also, where it is and etc. So accordingly, the text can get created of that sort too. So think of it, right? You have a video, you're giving a text prompt and telling the model, create an ad. Sometimes you could just see what do you see, or you could just see create a very catchy tagline for this particular video, who knows, or give me 10 captions that I could want for this video. Similarly, look at this stuff, and it says what is the activity the person is doing in the video. So many people, you would have also seen many kind of fitness apps are coming up, and they actually are trying to say you do the exercise and we'll tell you whether you're doing it well, or are you really doing that exercise, or whatever that might be. So this is another way of looking at it. Similarly, look at this video where it's just telling you, just tell me what's happening sequence by sequence, right? So something of this sort. Yeah, so it's a short clip, but then look at the kind of, I would say, fairly good quality, I would say, description that it's given of the video itself. So hopefully this or these several multimodal examples sort of just triggers a little bit of ideas that you may have for this. So before I come to that, right, or before I move forward, what I wanted to very quickly do, or let's put it this way, let me go through some of these 2 slides, and then I'll sort of go on to the Duet AI thing. So and then we'll see the whole thing integrated also. So again, some of you might be saying, how do I work with these models? What is the kind of things I can do? I want to see a lot more detailed examples of using Gemini, including not just the text thing, but multimodal inputs, etc., etc. So I would suggest take this link. Don't worry about the presentation link resources. We will make all of this available to you. But at this GitHub site, this is our official GitHub project itself, where we have made some of these things available. So if I just go to that particular project, again, let me a bit summarise it. So within this generative AI one, if you look at Gemini, again, you can look at the older Palm things also, but in Gemini, you will find that we've created various things, whether it's getting started or some sample apps or use cases. So if you go to, again, you can look at our, help over here. So for getting started, for example, there are several starter notebooks that we make available. So if you go there, you will find that all of these things, whether it's just a provision or whatever it might be. So if you just open one of these, for example, you will see that it's a pretty solid notebook with various examples that are made available for you, right? So take a look at some of these things also. Generate text from a local image, generate text from text and images, describe the scene is going on, then just tell us about the landmarks, right, where these are accordingly. Generate some text from a video file. So you have all of these pieces and examples in place. It's just up to you to explore it. So again, going back to the slide, we'll make these links available anyway, but you'll find it's available on GitHub. And I would say go within the Gemini folder to get the starter notebooks or samples for using these models with various prompts. Again, prompting is both, like whether it's a science, whether it's an art, which prompt will work, what are the ways you can, restructure your prompt. Should we give some examples? Should we, assume, ask the model to assume a particular context, etc., etc. There are like n number of things you must have heard. You might have even heard that prompt engineering is probably the hottest job out there in the market, etc., etc. But it's still a struggle at times as to how do we craft these prompts. So obviously, what we can do at best is give you some kind of a guide. So that's also a guide that's available to you over here. So again, all of these things are linked, but take a look, because sometimes if you're struggling with prompts, I would say just take an hour out from your normal coding part for the solution. Spend an hour maybe to just look at how some of these prompts are done. And remember, at times the prompts might look like I think I can do it, but when you actually start to do it, you'll find you're probably stuck up like, how do I construct this? I wanted a table, like for example what you're seeing here. Maybe you want more of a very specific output instead of just the results, right? So spend some time over here, because this will also give you, right, how we are constructing some of these prompts. And again, nothing bad in just taking these texts, modifying it a bit in order to see what will work for you. So remember, sometimes there are various things, like for example breaking it down, right? So you could actually like look at this. It says, when will I run out of toilet paper? Like it's saying soon, right? Maybe an updated thing could be like, let us do it step by step, right? So first do this, then that, right? So that way you can see what's the reasoning that the model is also doing behind the scenes. So I would say several of the links you're seeing over here, we've touched a little bit on AI Studio, and we said get an API key, choose your programming language. But before that, maybe spend some time with the prompts also, because that will help you to just get a little bit more confident in your prompting techniques. Okay. So given that, right, I mean, I'm not necessarily going to, while we'll go to some of those slides, so I'm going to now switch over to maybe taking a few questions, and then I'll switch over to actually seeing all of this work together in a more productive manner. So question, let me see. Accuracy gets more creative at 1. Can we dynamically change the temperature based on our prompt rather than changing it each time manually? Of course. So if you're, so for example, if you are in, let's say over here, let's go to one of these prompts and we say, okay, fair enough, write a story. But you look at the code, right? It's your code. So for example, this whole thing, which is the generation config, is basically your values that you pass. So you can always modify or create a method that takes in these parameters or a function that takes in these parameters, and you pass that. So it's completely dynamic. You don't need to hard code any of these things if needed. Anyways, you'll be passing a prompt. So you can pass these parameters also into your function and then use that. Presentation links will be shared. That's absolutely fine. Is there any SDK to integrate AI models in Flutter? So couldn't find one. So if you're specifically speaking about Dart, I'm not sure if there is an official one from us, but maybe just look out if someone has integrated the REST API and just made it simpler for you. So maybe that's the way I would look at that. And then Karthik says, when we send a prompt to the Gemini model and when we send a new prompt that has some connection with the old response given, will it answer the new prompt by storing the old response to? Okay, so you basically what you're trying to ask is that, can it remember the context? Can it remember previous answers? Can it probably pass along a few previous questions and responses so that the next question could be just a follow-up and you don't have to repeat. So there are two ways to do. If you're doing one shot, obviously you have to pass out of that context. So you'll need to store that value somewhere. But if you're using the chat model of doing that, so for example, if you see over here, there is this create new and a chat prompt. So a chat prompt is basically the thing which you're asking that can I continue a conversation back and forth with the model. So what you were saying previous is also passed along with it. The chat model indeed does that. So you can try out this. So what's the user saying? What's the model saying? What's the user saying? What's the model saying, right? And if you see the get code for it, you'll accordingly see that done in a different manner. So the old history, as you kind of users input says hello, and I don't know, maybe model's response is also hello. Then it says what is your name? I'm just showing you. And then the model's response is hi, I'm Gemini. And then maybe what we do is we just say what do you do? So right, so something of this sort, right? If you're continuing to do, if you now look at the code, correct, you will see a pretty interesting thing. So the whole history is a set or a collection or a list. Let's not worry about those finer points. It's a list of these messages. So what the user said, what the model said, what the user said, model said, right? And this is what you are then passing completely to it. So you're starting a chat and then saying, okay, this is what it is, right? So the exact answer to your question is if that's how you want, then you would like to go for the chat prompt or the chat model versus a free-form prompt, which is like a one-shot thing. It's stateless. It doesn't remember. However, nothing stops you from passing it in the context. But then the responsibility is in your application code to maintain all of these previous messages. Entirely up to you how you would want to do that. Chatting makes it easier by sending up. Again, everything is limited. Always remember by the token length. So you can't like have, but obviously the token length is pretty huge. So like literally you can have a, tens of pages of even a PDF completely in a prompt and just say, answer these questions, right? So everything is possible now. It's pretty interesting. Okay. Chat prompt from REST API. Yeah, it's all, everything is possible. As long as the SDK is there, REST API, it's the same thing to do that. Okay. Sorry, let me drink some water. Hold on, please. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to be doing is let's see some of these things in action, right? Just to maybe show you the ease with which you can do. So I'm going to switch over to Visual Studio Code. Everyone can see Visual Studio Code. Is it looking large enough, viewable, readable? Okay, so I'm in Visual Studio Code, and most of you probably are familiar with Visual Studio Code, and you also know that there is a whole extensions, to Visual Studio. So we've got a Cloud Code extension by which you can integrate, basically install it. So just go to the extensions, marketplace, and Google Cloud Code. This is the extension that you want to install. Just at Google Cloud Code, you'll get the extension. It's free, and you install it, and things move from there. But now let's see quickly, how does this help you to do that, right? So maybe I am right now in my Visual Studio Code, and once you install the Cloud Code extension, for example, you see over here, I'm just going to use some way by which I can create a new application within the Google ecosystem. So when I say new application, you see over here, very interesting, there is already a Gemini generative AI application. Again, when you click on that, it's currently having only these two, but I'm just showing you how quickly you can do that. Other things also, the code samples are straight from the quick start itself, but you can be within your IDE while working over here. So you're in, let's say, again, let me just come out of it. So I'm just saying I want to create a new application. I'm saying there's a Gemini generative AI application, let's go for that. And then let's go with, say, Python, for example. Now, I'll just create it in a default folder. That's fine. So it basically downloads the quick start application for you over here. And it's doing a few things, right? So obviously what it has done is it's given you a few things, how to install it, etc., etc. Now, if you look at the main.python, again, don't worry if you're not a Python, that's completely fine over here. So you will see it's similar code, right? So basically we are saying, where is your key, right? Just give it the key. In this case, it's reading from the environment. So obviously we can either hard code it here or export it in the environment, whichever way you want to do it. This is a sample code that's given to you. And then all it is doing is it's like saying, I'm going to create a generative AI model, and the model name is Gemini Pro. And I'm saying generate content, and this is my prompt. This looks, similar to what I've been showing you in this itself. So for example, if we are saying create new free form prompt, and let's say write a story about this, and we do a get code, similar stuff, right? Where you are seeing, obviously it's here, this is much more detailed. You can take that also, but you can see it's doing a generative model. It's not use those optional parameters in the sample code there, but you can use it also. But you'll see it's similarly basically this code, and then it's the response model generate content. So if I go back over here, that's the thing it just created for you. Now, for example, there's also, for Python folks who know it, there's a requirements.txt. This is the thing that it's got out here for you. And even this code would have told you something similar, that you need to install this stuff. So now within Visual Studio Code itself, right? Let me do a few things. For those who know it, so I'm just going to create a Python environment. This is nothing to do with Gemini. This is just my Python environment to keep it clean. And I'll say take in the requirements.txt because that already has the Google generative AI thing. So I'll just, so what it's doing over here, as you can see, is it's just doing a pip install, right? The step. Once that's done, we can find that, hey, what do we need to do next? Maybe I'll just go ahead and launch a new terminal, session. And over here, as you can see, I created an environment, so it's there, but I could do like a Python and then do a main.py, right? And that's it. Let's run it. Obviously, have I created that API key? Obviously, I didn't even care. I just went in just my hurry, I went ahead and ran it. So obviously, if you look at the code, it told you that, hey, you were supposed to have something in the environment because that's your key, right? And obviously, it didn't have anything. So look at, it gave an exception, which is what is expected, 403 request. Now, interesting thing is, right, like, what does this error really mean? So this is where I'll start showing you Duet AI's, I would say integration also. So maybe I copy this, and you see this little Duet AI chat that's out here. So I can actually, it's like a little bit of an assistant within the IDE. So I can just say that, explain this error. I don't know. I'll just try this prompt and see what it comes up with. Right. So it's probably telling you some of the things as to, what could have gone wrong, etc., etc. The other thing also is, I'll just show you, you can be in your Python file and say, hey, explain this to me. I'm a little bit, I don't know what's going on in this file. So I can actually open up that file and see now it's telling me a little bit more, of course, in what you're doing over this, right? So what I'm saying is that, like, for example, even if you want to generate some code, right? Again, I'll come to what we were doing over here. But for example, let's say I just go ahead and do a new Python file, let's say, okay. And let's maybe save this as a test123.py, sorry for the name. And now this is how I can do things. For example, write, okay, a Python function to say retrieve contents from a URL, let's say something of this sort. And now if I do a control enter to generate suggestions, see, it's generating, or at least suggesting code to me. So I can go to different code examples that it suggests also and pick it up from there, right? So maybe if this one is okay, I do an accept. And then, so the code completion, code generation. For example, like let's say this, and now maybe you say that generate unit tests. Let's see if it does it. And now it will that particular file, and as you can see, it's creating even unit tests for you with that particular method that you can test it out with, it valid one, invalid one, and so on. So I just showed you code generation, code completion, maybe even asking Duet to explain things to me, or all of that stuff, right? So again, see if this is something you like to use. It will just make you a little bit more productive, more quickly, instead of running around switching context from one thing to another. At least it is all within the ID and just acts as a very good, helpful assistant, if I may say so. Now, let's close this for a moment and get back to what we were doing here, right? So this is the Google API key. It's asking for that. Again, it's as simple as saying, let's go back to our AI Studio. Let's go back to the API key, and I've generated some. So I'll just take this API key and copy it. And again, for all I care, I can just directly give the value here, but we'll be nice and we'll say, because it's expecting an environment variable, maybe I can just say export, what's that, Google API key, and I've done that. Okay, so I'll just do a Python and a main.py, and what is the prompt? How do I bake a cake? That same one which I had passed there. So let me just close this so we get some more real estate here. And now let's run this. So what this is going to do is take that API key and give us the output. Should be a bit faster, but there we go. Okay, you can even do it in streaming mode and all of that stuff also, but right now I've just got it in one shot. So this is a quick way. So as you can see, right, in order to, like, if you come up with your prompts, it's going to be as simple as a few lines. This anyway is not really needed. It's just showing you, whether the model supports it or not. So we can even get done with all of this if you want, right? So again, give your prompts over here, right? And let's see. It's even completing some things. And then let's do here and go up here. It should work, but I'm just showing you that it's just iterating through some of those prompts, etc. also is as straightforward as this. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the presentation to just reiterate something that I showed you from a AI assistance point of view for developers. The Duet AI part that I mentioned is available now for developers. The thing I was showing you in the ID, explain this, write unit tests, generate the code, etc., etc. Right? So this has been available around the same time of 15th December or 14th December. Forget the exact date, is when we announced Duet AI for developers also. If you go back to the slide at the very beginning, let me go back for a minute. Quickly, I had shown you this particular slide. Hopefully, this picture is now beginning to get a little bit clearer. The models are in place. We're using AI Studio, maybe from an API key, prompting, etc. techniques, but Duet AI is a helpful assistant right on top. So you could be in your ID, ask questions, ask it to generate code, etc., etc. And that's another, service product that we announced around the same time. So going back to some of those features in the slide deck. So basically, this is again a summary slide, but the next one. So you could chat there, the code completion as you type. Again, I showed you all of this. These are just screenshots out there, or GIFs basically. So you can say, generate some code for me. You just put a comment and say generate, it will do that for you. You can even chat as I showed you, like explain this or implement this or write me some code, etc. And again, don't limit it to just Python or whatever that you saw. literally most languages, literally even HTML and other front-end frameworks ask it to generate a code, right? So for example, if you're here, I'll just open up this, and if I say very similar, write a HTML file that creates an, let's say, input form with three inputs, which is let's say name, city, and country. I'm just giving some vague example, but let's see, right? So the point is, you can use this pretty much as your coding assistant also. You can even, for example, uh, further do follow up. So this is a chat model, like one of the questions that was asked, right? So now that you're told to generate an HTML file, you could even say, can you update the above HTML file with, let's say, Bootstrap CSS. I'm just giving an example. So as you can see now, it started to just make it a little bit better, or Tailwind CSS, depends, right? You go ahead and do that stuff. So it's completely up to you which programming language. Literally 20 plus programming languages, framework, etc. are supported. Going back to my slides, into this. Oops. So seeing all my books. What happened to my UI? Okay, here we are. Okay, so the chat in ID is there. Then you've got the license attribute stuff also. This is pretty neat. If we suggest some code, we will also tell where that code is from. So it's very useful for organizations who are a little bit careful in terms of what code they simply, absorb into the system. They would like to see what licenses, where has it been picked from, etc., etc. Explain the code. That's a neat thing. As you saw, you could simply say, I don't understand this line of code or this whole file, and could you, explain this to me? Similarly, test plans, we saw either propose a plan or write the test cases. It can do that also. So again, keep in mind, Duet AI for developers is available for no cost till February 1. So in case you're building out a solution, needs some help, maybe think about using that as your AI assistant also. That's pretty much what I had. So I can take in a few more questions if you want, or whichever way you want to go. I'm okay to stay for a while if you've got questions on what we covered today. But I would say that we'll anyways share this. A quick way is understand a little bit about the prompts so that you can try out the things. It's multimodal, so think about using images, video, text, any of those use cases also. Gemini Pro should be able to handle that. Integrating it, as I showed it to you, is very straightforward. Take in an API key and simply pick up whichever is your language framework. Worst case scenario, REST API. And I'm pretty sure, like we saw an a question whether Dart is supported here. I'm pretty sure someone has written a wrapper around the REST API and made that available as a Dart package. So possibly look at that. Again, we also covered, while it was not within the scope of things, I just showed you what we had, for developers, Duet AI, which is just your assistant available to help you just get more productive with your coding tasks. Though its scope is a lot wider in Google Cloud, but what I showed you was very specifically for developers. So hopefully this picture is a bit clearer to you now. For all you care, let the models be there. Simply start using the models. And I would say the quickest way would be via the AI Studio. AI Studio, again, pricing, if you see, it's pretty much available. So if I can very quickly, hopefully, get to some of, not sure where it might be the pricing, but you can search for it and it should be all there. Yeah. But again, ai.google.dev, sorry, let me repeat that. That's your go-to site. In case you want to dig deeper into Gemini via some advanced, both starter as well as advanced notebooks, then I told you we had this GitHub thing also, which you can use. You can jump into Gemini and take a look at the various examples, use cases, etc., that we have there. All right. There any questions? Keep typing. I'm just going to see one more that's come in from Rishabh. How can we use the AI models for application specific purpose? I mean, how can these models be trained on a specific application usage? So if you're looking at tuning the models, then there are ways to do that. So the AI Studio allows you to tune it by giving it some examples. But if you're really into the Vertex side of things, you can do a lot more fine tuning also if you want. So obviously, foundational models on their own may have or will have some restrictions. Obviously, for your own kind of data or own kind of samples, etc., it might not have heard about it or know about it. So in that case, you have to fine tune. And there are ways to do that. So if you look at the fine tuning examples, you will come across it. Vertex AI obviously opens it up completely to a true ML builder could possibly do anything with it. Any other questions? Anything else that I can help with? Okay. Uh, there are no questions. We should be fine. Nikita, are you there?
Hey Roman, yes, I'm there. Thank you so much for a fantastic session on Gemini Pro and Duet AI. I hope they all utilize these learnings and make some meaningful projects out of it. I quickly wanted to share the feedback form with everyone. Meanwhile, I just see a question in the chats that when Project IDX is going to come, maybe you can look in the chat section.
Yeah. So when Project IDX is going to come out for preview in India, I don't have information on that. I'm sorry. Yeah.
All right, I am sharing the feedback form with you on the screens. You can also scan the code and fill the feedback. Otherwise, I'm sharing the link in the chat section for everyone. Please take a moment to fill the feedback. It really is valuable for us to understand what worked with you and what could be improved in the upcoming sessions. So, kindly take a moment to fill your. Thank you so much. I hope you have a lovely rest of the evening and stay safe, especially folks on the northern side of India. And we'll see you soon with another session. Thank you so much. Oh, okay. Let me just check with the form. I do see that it's active, accepting responses. Hmm, okay. Have you used the bit.ly link or the QR code? Because I can see that it's accepting responses. Yeah, it's working. Good. Thank you so much. I hope you all take the effort to submit your feedback. It won't take much of your time. And I'll see you all soon. Thank you so much.